thought of that at market, but that's good.
That's the best marketing approach we had here, you know? Very desperate people, I guess.
Wait, we gotta bring that up at that meeting.
Yeah, I'll bring it up. I was hoping, I always I guess I don't even know. He did end up sending the choir, so it was funny. I thought it was funny. Thank you, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm waiting for yeah. Your only job, yeah, exactly.
Everyone's done it, and it goes right back.
Is it?
It's really weird. It's been fixed.
Building's like settling or something.
Yeah, I know. Or he's letting his.
How's it going? Doing good.
We're really a peanut gallery.
Yeah.
Right? We're the peanuts. I didn't know. I guess it's
We're a high-tech organization.
Yeah. So when after this is all done, the display case up front which switched out. All the fans that were there, they're all put away, and it's all different stuff. Yeah, they did a great job. The ring is a cool story. And the ring out there. Yeah.
It was, I thought, wow, because that wasn't like the first 3 minutes. Not even
Literally, as soon as it
30
turned on,
seconds.
it was like, bing, like it took one swing.
Oh, here's that go, wow, is this the first thing? I can't wait to see what's coming out. And after that, it was just those little
The
button
tacks that
things.
were on, yeah, the decorative
A lot of nails.
Yeah. I know, we got all the fun out of the way right in the first 30 seconds.
Where was this? I'm sorry.
This is in the receiving tomb. This is like 2019, I think. We found that gold ring. Did you remember that story?
I think I have heard.
Yeah. And so it's on display now up in the display case. But it's cool, the story that was tied in with the great granddaughter. It's like a whole. The ring sounds cool, but the entire story is cool. He should just put these right up in the paper.
We have a capacity crowd today, and so as people join us, they may seep through. I do know that we got some extra seats. And for those of you who, we got a lot of emails from people who wanted to get tickets. I mean, you can see the building challenges, right? Absolutely. So welcome. I'm George Camo from here at the Historical Society. I want to also recognize some of our other fellow trustees. Seth Bergschneider's in the back, Chris is over here, Matt Tate, I saw Matt somewhere, there's Matt in the back, Will Thorne is here, and then also Carol was here earlier. Today's program was conceived and supported by Ashley Bell, Paul Buckley, Emily Corbett, and Carol Munson. And so these are folks who put these amazing programs together so that you can sort of learn more about our town and where we are. Just by way of a couple of quick updates from the society here. We are in the process of preparing for annual town meeting. We've requested from the town of Canton through the Community Preservation Act $40,000 grant to study this building and to understand how we can expand and use our collections in different ways relative to the architecture of the space. We very much want to create a building that is handicap accessible, has handicapped bathrooms, and utilizes our below ground space for archival support. We have a very big basement underneath us with a beautiful floor to ceiling ratio. We think that in the future that will be of some use to us if we can sort of expand in that direction. But so we're in the process, so if you are so inclined and you're at annual town meeting this year, I hope that you'll help us put that over the top. It's a $50,000 project, 10,000 of which is coming from the society, from you, our friends, and the bulk will be coming from the Community Preservation Act. There's also a new exhibit that's opened up at the Canton Public Library, if you get a chance to go and see it. Emily and Seth put together an amazing exhibit on early American glass, and our collection has some really beautiful pieces. If you're in the library, it's on the lower level next to the children's room. There's two large cases, that's where it is, right? Next to the two large cases at the bottom of the stairs, right outside the community room. And the items that are there are some of our most fragile and some of our oldest pieces. And so you'll want to see that exhibit if you get a chance. It'll be there for a couple of months, so there'll certainly be time for that. And then I'll put in a plug for my friends from the Paul Revere Heritage Site. They're here as well. When is our big day, our field day?
May 17th.
May 17th.
Canton Heritage Festival.
The Heritage Festival. Alice, you want to say anything about it?
For anyone who's not aware, it is a huge event, takes place over the entire site. We're going to have 100 crafters and vendors. We have lots more food trucks this year, activities for kids, copper exhibit. It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be great. Who's been to it before? Anybody been to it before? If you haven't been to it, it's a great take. It's free to get in, and then just bring a lot of cash.
Yeah.
Great stuff that you're in.
And there's a free shuttle that runs between the Canton Junction MBTA and the site.
Yeah. And it garners thousands and thousands of visitors every year. It's a real classic American field day, so come on out for that and enjoy that event. Finally, one last note on the Paul Revere Heritage Site. There's a museum that is opening up this fall after a $2.5 million commitment and fundraising through federal, state, and local sources. And a number of pieces from our collection are showcased in the storytelling, and there's digital and interactive and large screens and artifacts and a movie and all sorts of amazing things that are happening there, and that will be opening this fall. Any questions before we get on with our show? Well, I'm so happy to have you all here today. We know that weekends are very near and dear to folks, and so this program is very special to us. We began working with Eric and Beth. This is Eric Moyen and Beth Palumbo from the, I'm going to mess it up, so just tell me. The name of the organization.
Oh, Southwest Boston's,
South Boston Paranormal Society.
Southwest Boston.
Southwest Boston Paranormal Society. Eric reached out over a year ago and said, can I come and study the Tilden House? You know, it's a really old house, 1725. And we said, we took a vote at the trustees and we said, you know, do we want people to study paranormal activities? And everybody was just giggling and said, yes, let's do it. And so we did, and Eric and his crew, they've been a delight. They've been amazing, and we've learned a lot. Who's a skeptic here? Are there skeptics? It's okay to say you are a skeptic, right? Raise your hands if you're skeptics. You're all believers? Will, did you raise your hand on skeptic? Okay, good. Will, a man of science and technology, but you know, it's really been joyful to be with them because they've taught us a lot about the craft that they practice and the study that they do. They're the consummate professionals. They were so gracious, they actually wrote a check to us to support our mission. And so we are very, very grateful to them and the work that they're doing. I know that things go bump in the night. I just know it. And there were things that I experienced during their visit that I can't explain. I really can't. I have no idea. So we'll hear from them in just a second. They're going to run a 28-minute movie or so that they put together that studies this building. And some of the things that they discovered in this building, we put together a small exhibit. I will tell you, for those who don't want to see it, there is a glass plate that's in here of a small child who died when she or he was 2 months old, and the family took a photograph in casket. So we believe it's a child that passed away. This is in the 1880s, by the way. But for those who might find that troubling, avert your eyes. That's the only thing that's really troubling in this case for those who are troubled by it. There's a lot of really other memento mores with hair that's been woven into bracelets to remember their dear friends. There's a beautiful wedding ring that we recovered from one of the receiving tombs. And there's this portrait of Dr. Abbott, who plays a real singular role in the discovery of some of the stuff that happened in the basement. Ezra's portrait was hanging in the basement, and we think Ezra had a lot to do with some of the things that we experienced that day here in the basement. So he's come upstairs, which probably, I don't know if he likes it or not, you'll probably have to ask him. He's not talking to me much, but you'll see the sort of role that some of these artifacts have played. And this organization sensed and experienced a number of our artifacts here in the building. And so they will be happy to sort of talk. You want to talk a little before you start the movie? What would you like to do?
Well, time's kind of tight. I figured we'd just go through a couple things that we're using so you guys kind of understand. So you'll see.
And this is Eric, by the way. Sorry.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today, taking time out of your day and coming and listening and visiting the museum. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, George. George. So most of you know this is George. Curious George. So this George is not like every other George. This George is special. So you get within that range of George's head, he's a proximity alarm. So if something, imagine like an imaginary force field around George's body. You break the force field, he lights up. You're going to see that at the beginning of the video from this museum. George goes off quite a bit. At the other house, I used at the Tilden house specifically, I used the Snoopy. And the Snoopy, we're not going to get too far into the Tilden video, but the video will be on YouTube. You guys can watch it there. But in that, I'm like, can you touch, what is that? And I point at the doll, and you will hear it's a dog. And I disagree and say, no, it's Snoopy. And there's a little bit of conversation back and forth. But, so we use that. This is a spirit box for anyone who doesn't know. Other people, you're skeptics, it's a radio. So what this does is it sweeps, scans radio stations. Now, common radio, what it would do is there's a mute switch in here, and what that does is when you're in your car, you don't hear all that. Some people find it annoying, but you don't hear that. That's because the mute switch is engaged and it cancels all of that mute. The idea is that spirits can communicate within that little area of white noise. So we're going to use that. This is an EMF detector, commonly referred to as a K2. It measures milligauss electromagnetic fields. The idea is that, right now we'll call this 0. If I bring my cell phone, which is over there, or my iPad in, this will light up like a Christmas tree because it doesn't like the electromagnetic radiation that this is emitting. And then the last thing, which I don't think is too much in the museum, this is a flux tube. Now you notice in a second there's going to be a green light and a red light. We use this like a yes or no. You ask questions, and what it does is, anyone familiar with what an interferometer is? Anyone have like laser equipment at home, just like a laser level? So an interferometer, what it does is it shoots out a laser. It measures a distance. You see, it doesn't do anything right now, but when I cut off the distance, it'll go off. So essentially it shoots off, like in this case, it's probably about 12, 16 inches. If you break that distance, it'll make a light go off. So what we'll do is we'll ask questions, Spirit will break that. As well as that, let's stop, sounded like R2-D2. See these little lights? Well, those are sensors for temperature as well. So if there's a temperature fluctuation here, it'll go off. For your skeptics, I agree, don't use it outside. Because there are breezes, there are things that can interfere. So this is the equipment that you're going to see in the video. You have anything?
No, other than we do know that the spirits in this building love George. So I asked them if they were happy that George took care of his stuff, and they said yes.
Very kind of them.
I think you'll actually see that.
When I went in the basement and they were working on this, things did happen. I think that all of this is really helpful just to learn and keep our minds open and just figure out, who we are, where we've been, and what these things can tell us. There's a rich history of paranormal in Canton in particular. This gentleman here, Morse, there with the mutton chops there, he believed in the paranormal. He was our congressman, and in his basement there were books on paranormal and phrenology. Reading the skull and the brains and hands and all that. In his personal library. So we know that this is something that has been studied for a long time, and so this was our first chance to get a real scientific, if you will, study of that. So why don't we run this film? The film runs about 28 minutes or so, and then Eric will answer questions. You'll have lots of questions. We also brought in a speaker so you can hear, because a lot of stuff is hearing things. So you'll hear a lot of this, and hopefully it's loud enough for everybody that's here. So, any questions before we get going? All right. Well, let's hit those lights. Let me do this. So weird, right? Because it literally, it's 1 second. Sorry about that.
Does she need?
In Canton, Massachusetts. On a cold and rainy day in January 2024, we visited a historical society building on Washington Street in Canton, Massachusetts. The site was once the location of the Everett Tavern and a knitting factory. The current structure's interior was salvaged from a schoolhouse on the intersection of Washington and Randolph Streets. Many think of North Square when they think of Paul Revere's home, but it was Canton the Reveres chose to spend their summers. Their home in Canton may have been destroyed in the early 20th century, but many historical artifacts connected to Paul Revere can be found at the Canton Historical Society. Most notable is his sword. There is also a journal of a chaplain who served during one of the bloodiest battles in our nation's history. In the journal, the chaplain not only gives accounts of conflicts on the battlefield, but also the internal conflicts soldiers faced where survival meant taking another man's life. There is a belief that energies can be attached to objects. While at the Canton Historical Society, we encountered EVPs, REM pods going off, K2 spikes, and more. With tens, if not hundreds of thousands of objects on display, what type of energies did we encounter? Friends, we are honored to bring to you, courtesy of Imaginary Friends Paranormal and the Southwest Boston Paranormal Society, the Canton Historical Society. While the team was upstairs setting up, the monkey REM pod went off without anyone in the basement. Beth heard the noise and came downstairs to investigate. These REM pod alarms caused Eric to question what is going on in the basement. As Eric enters the basement, Beth goes upstairs.
We just saw the monkey go off. Can you do that again? Can you touch that monkey? Can you please touch that monkey? Just touch him right on the head, if you don't mind. Just heard something metal. That's pretty awesome.
Beth returns to the basement. Beth and Eric begin using a Flux 2 and a K2 meter while asking the spirits questions.
Been playing with it, you really want them to touch it. Thank you. Thank you for lighting up the green light. So this is a little girl and a little boy that's here? I'm like 9 years old and 7 years old. No, I guess when I asked him this,
So you see this little pretty? Oh yeah. Yeah, that's it. Can you keep that lining up? What's this one? You're making this a lot of fun right now. The only thing left is if you made that big. You don't seem to be making that go up. If you make this go up, would you like this better than that? Turn that thing off and I'll put this over there. We can ask you some questions and see if you can make the lights. Sound like a good idea? It does? Can you make this light up? So maybe go past the green. Okay. I am game. You're awesome. Whoa, 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 whoa. There we go.
How close do you have to be to set the REM pod off?
Just for the camera to see. In order to have George go on, you have to be that close.
Are you still here with us? Show us that you're here. Thank you. It's awesome. Do you like that George takes care of everything here? You like George, huh? He's a good guy.
Oh, that's nice. You really cared about you and this place. That's awesome. That it's reciprocated like that.
It wasn't possible.
A little later, Beth and Eric try to figure out who they have been communicating with in the basement. The name Ed had came through a few times, so they questioned if this were an Edward, Edwin, or some other variation of the name Ed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your name Ed? Edward?
This is just
Is there somebody else down here with you, Ed? Is your name Edward?
You didn't hear that? 15 seconds ago. So this is me.
Did Eric hear the growl?
So this is me. And look,
Did you hear something?
did you have respiratory issues, Ed? You get some issues with your respiratory? Is that what you're trying to convey? You make that thing light up if you did? Yeah, it's just a little green. Can you go a little further there? Just to confirm it?
Did you have tuberculosis? Is that a yes? You have tuberculosis?
Beth returns upstairs and Eric notices a picture on the wall behind the monkey. The picture is of a Dr. Ezra Abbott. Eric is curious if the name Ed is being misinterpreted and is actually Ezra.
And I saw a picture over there on the wall. Just want to make sure that I'm not wrong. Is your name Ezra? Are you Ezra, the man on the wall? Whose picture's on the wall? Well, I apologize. Ezra. One more time, let's just prove. If that is you, light it up, which you just did. Is your name Ezra? Are you the man whose picture's on the wall? Ezra. Thank you.
Listen to this EVP. The spirit speaks at the same time as Eric. Remember, Eric is alone at this time.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Eric goes upstairs to get Ashley and George. The group takes a break and meet in the main artifact room of the museum to research a box recently donated that contained an Ida May portrait. The portrait is of a mid-18th century, young, white, female slave. The box was recently donated to the museum by a Canton family. Eric places a K2 meter on the treasure chest-looking box and props his cell phone up against a soft-shell protective camera case. Please note that the camera is leaning towards the case and is very stable.
And a white slave purchased by the Honorable Charles and others of Virginia Christians. That just blows me away. That this is this.
And the frame looks identical. Except the frame pushes.
I would imagine they have a bunch
Notice anyone moving is not touching any part of the table.
Imagine they have a bunch of raise money. That's pretty wild.
Story of Mary Mildred Williams and the Abolition.
Keep an eye on the K2 meter. You will also see a few EMF spikes during this interaction.
We like it.
Just let it go. No problem at all. Or just make it go crazy like that.
Yeah, that's the way that comes.
The ones are such.
Again, no one moving touches the table.
The ones are such.
It is. Wow.
Yeah, I got it propped up. That's the second time it fell.
That was the last time the phone fell. Both times no one moving was touching the table. Eric tried what we call an earthquake test to debunk any deflection in the floor, and the phone would not budge while being supported by the soft shell camera case. Eric returns with two people from the location, Ashley and George.
So Ezra Ezra, if you're here, remember how you made that light up? That thing right there? Can you just show George? Can you make that thing go all the way to orange? Just make all the pretty colors light up. Okay, that's green. You go a little bit further. I know you got it. Ah, there you go. What? How did that happen? You're a show off. Ezra, look at this. Do you see this? Do you see this? Do you guys see that? It's crazy. That's wild. So, Ezra, well, the energy of Ezra is here, and was able to do this. Yeah, he's essentially letting you know that he's here. Ezra's here. Yeah. Ezra Abbott is a doctor. Oh, yeah. He likes EMF detectors, apparently. Apparently. Well, he's a man of science. So well, he would definitely know how they work. He would know that. Wow. Well, Ezra, I'm glad you're here. Are you happy to be here? Can I ask him questions? Does he answer? Yeah, sure. Ezra Abbott, can you hear me? If you can you light that thing up again? Make it go to the higher colors. If you can hear me, can you make the colors? Wow! Ezra. So, Ezra, are you happy to be here? That's a thing. That's a placing. Absolutely, yes. Really? Yeah. Ezra, I'm so glad you're here. Wow. He's glad to be here. Wow.
We investigated 2 vaults. The first contained military and historical artifacts. One EVP was captured, which was. The second vault was filled with textiles. The artifacts ranged from historic military uniforms worn in battle to clothing and uniforms worn by historic Canton residents. And while we did experience several EMF spikes, we had to rule them out because we cannot be certain. The small panel inside the vault did not generate any false positives. Eric performs an earthquake test and cannot reproduce the tapping.
Okay.
Are you happy now that you're here? What's your favorite type of food? Did you have a nickname everyone called you? What was it?
What year were you here? For what year? Visit to you. What's your favorite drink? How old are you?
Jorge is George in Spanish. Was the spirit box referencing George, who was in the exhibit room? The main exhibit room was used as our base during the investigation. This room has thousands of artifacts and is a true gem. On site was Beth, Kim, Judy, and Eric of Southwest Boston Paranormal. George, Ashley, and another member of the society were there for supervision. 2 EVPs were captured upstairs. These were... And the second was while entering the staircase for the basement, and that occurs just as Eric is opening the door to the stairwell. As Eric enters the stairwell, he quickly realizes what he just heard is very out of place.
I just heard.
No one in the room made that noise. Sometimes the best EVPs are the ones we hear in the moment. Have you ever heard something that was so out of place and character for the people in the room? Ever question if you just heard something? Eric returns to the basement where he will capture a few more EVPs and have a brief spirit box session.
How many things am I holding up?
The peace sign is a non-verbal gesture made by raising the index and middle fingers in a V shape. So this would be correct, but peace is not a number.
Try this. What is this? What type of animal is he? What would I put on this to fix?
It is a shoe anvil. Was that sarcasm? Not eggs?
Alright. Think we can stop picking up. Gotta go home. Beth.
Do you enjoy seeing and hearing things that cannot be easily explained? If yes, please subscribe so we can continue sharing our experiences with wonderful people like yourselves.
First thoughts, questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I might have missed in the beginning, but can you just go back to when the text translations come through the, whatever it was, like how does that work? Is it radio?
The radio, so regular radio has a mute switch on, and what that mute switch does is, you're not gonna wanna listen to shh, and then your radio station. So the idea, we remove the mute switch from the radio, and we just focus on those white noise areas. I believe in like the early 2000s, late 90s, there was even a movie, White Noise, probably dating myself here, but yeah, and the idea is you're looking for those areas. And one reason for that white noise is generally, if you go with some of your best DVDs, if you go into an area that's completely quiet, you might catch something, but the likelihood of like having something else going on and then catching something is actually really good, which worked out well. I apologize for the audio. The heat was running most of the time. If I would have left it, it would have sounded so much worse. But yeah, and actually, I believe that white noise from the forced hot air actually probably helped the situation. So yeah, so we're removing a mute switch, looking for the static and the white noise, and looking for words within that white noise. And generally, the only ones we're going to try to identify are the ones that are intelligent. Like, what is this? Peace. And just so you know, when I hear that and I hear it live, I love it. I absolutely, it makes my day.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how you decipher what they're saying. I didn't hear those words.
So noise canceling headphones and hours and hours and hours worth of review. So if it's jargon, like you'll see there are some times with question marks. There are times I'll slow it down, but generally no one's gonna watch the video and sit there for 5 hours and go through it. So I generally just throw most of the words there to try to help someone figure
And
out.
they were here for a long time, on 2 different occasions, because we did Tilden as well, and they were here for 5 or 6 hours, so they're recording a lot of material. And then it was months before, I mean, there was some quick stuff that you sent right away, it was like, oh my God, low hanging fruit, and then you started working on this project, and it took some time, I would imagine.
So what I do personally, camera-wise, is I set up, so I'll record anywhere from 4 up to 6 hours. I don't like anything smaller than that. And generally, I'll set up 6 to 8 cameras. So you take that number, 6 hours, multiply it by 8, that's 48 hours worth of footage. And generally, your regular producer, I produce these videos, but generally your regular producer is gonna eliminate all of that. So the software, all of those nuance helps you want to avoid. Like you don't want to try to remove all the background noise or things going on. You actually are trying to utilize that, which is actually hard with the software that we have, because most producers are trying to get rid of all of that and only focus on George's voice, not Ezra or someone else's voice. But yeah, just hours of listening and trying to decipher what it is. And anything that I think is off, I'll usually put in, or if it's intelligent. So what you're seeing is 28 minutes, but it's 28 minutes condensed down from anywhere between 45 and 60 hours. So the bigger net you throw, the more fish you'll catch. That's the way I look at it, but my wife may disagree because I spend a lot of time with headphones on, watching video, and that can be very cumbersome. Very cumbersome.
And Beth, when you were here, you were feeling energy off different items. I mean, we talked about that when we brought different pieces out. And what's interesting is, you hadn't seen a lot of these artifacts, and when I brought them out, I would bring a closed box. And in the case of the epaulettes that are here, she got a closed box, and the navy and ocean started coming through. But not even opening the box, so I'm sort of interested in those experiences.
Well, our group is mostly mediums, so we all do feel energy. And I know you brought some stuff out for Judy, without Judy knowing what was in the box. And in fact, I think you did a live with that. And she guessed like 90% of everything that went on with what was in that box.
Yeah. It was a couple of times when I would lead Judy down a path that I was sort of thinking about how to support her ideas in sort of non-verbal ways, like really leaning into it. And in the hopes that, I'll just let her go down this path. None of this is true. That's the skeptic part of me saying. But in many cases, that was true. I mean, you sort of zeroed in on all that. And so that I thought was really interesting.
I know you brought out a box and it had that ring in it. And she even told you what the person's name is.
Yeah, this is this little ring that's in the case. Yeah, you'll see some of the stuff that we played with. Yeah. Well.
I remain a skeptic, but there's a difference between a skeptic and just calling it nonsense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you taken your EMF detector and George and put them in like a control environment, like a similar kind of basement with boxes around and a similar foundation, maybe this feels similar to what it is, and like does George go off, you know what I mean? Like kind of like, is there some background rate of those things going off so I'm getting at,
No, so there's like if you let it sit for an hour, a half hour, 5 hours, there's no EMF, it's not gonna go off. And something actually has to break that 12 to 16 inch plane that I showed you. So if something's not in the area, it's not gonna.
I just know it went off a lot in the basement. I mean, it was, clear that nobody's near it. But if you just left it, it's all by itself and there's no EMF. It doesn't go off.
And I can tell you that I've left this thing, last couple of years been 50 or 60 locations. We're talking 40 to 60 hours of footage. Sometimes I wish they kind of went off. But there have been, 40 hours of watching and they do nothing at all. I have more than just George. There have been several instances where they don't go off at all.
And there's been instances where we've been able to speak to spirit through these. And, the thing will be sitting there, and just like when you saw the EMF thing go off, this thing will also, spirits will also manipulate this to answer questions as well. Especially that house up in Troy.
We took it to someone's house and it went off thousands of times. And I literally took the thing like downstairs into a bedroom and I'm like, hold on, let's take a look at this thing. Because it went off now it's in Beth's house and I didn't take it home. But she owns it now. But yeah, this thing went off thousands. And the funny thing is she's actually taken it, remember I said it's gone off thousands of times, she's actually taken it places and the thing hasn't gone off once. Another place. So it's, it's similar to fishing. You're throwing out your lure and you never know what you're gonna get. You just keep switching it up. And generally for here, for a location like this, we just try to keep it kind of simple with these basic kind of tools. We have a lot more now and a wider array, but this will get the job done.
Before we take a question, the Neffs are here, and they help us at Florida Heritage, but before they were here, you were at the Fairbanks House in Dedham, and that was also the subject of a number of studies. Do you think there's something there to it?
I don't know. There's definitely stuff I couldn't explain, stuff that, like any one thing you can sort of dismiss, but like the same thing happens, the same upstairs alarm goes off at the same time, or whatever you start about that.
Well, it's something that, we live in a house that was built in 1880, and we have felt presences, in that house. And in our front hallway in the upstairs, we have a motion detector light, for night light, that we would break the beam and the light will go on. And our bedroom used to be outside that space, and 2 in the morning, it would just go off. And as that started, we were like, what's going on? Is it, is somebody in the hall? We sort of went through all the things. It sounds really weird, right? So then one day we decided, all right, let's just replace it. It's clearly defective, right, if this keeps going up. Every single motion light we've put in that place at the top of those stairs, nothing else moving, it will go off on its own. And so then I got, I'm like, I'm sort of still the skeptic. I'm thinking, well, is it the electrical system? Is it the plug? Is it, what else would cause perfectly good motion detector lights where there is no motion? And you've all probably seen it with your dogs or, or cats where they've seen something, right? They see something, and you're like, what is this? And it happened in this building to me with one of my pets one night. Just sitting here doing things, all of a sudden just starts barking and barking at this mannequin in the corner. Well, she thinks it's a person. She's just finally clicked in something in her brain and she thinks somebody's in the room. The more I showed it, the more she was just kept going like it was a real person. And so as I started studying the artifact that was on the mannequin, that's when I discovered the story of this amazing woman in World War I who died at the very end of World War I, the only female from Canton that was in the war that's on our war memorial here. And so it's as if the person wanted to talk, wanted it to come out, and it was through the dog. So, these are just unexplained things, right, along the way. See my vacation shots. There was a question there, yes.
Yeah, why always down the cellar? Why couldn't you have said something up here?
We did. We were up here too, right? I mean, I think the basement was what we were doing. There were people, the study was happening on multiple floors. We took artifacts out that were here, and then we did Tilden House too, and that was a full scale, every room, bedroom, downstairs, basement, the whole 9 yards. But I don't know how you settled on the basement.
Well, as far as the footage, I'm presenting to you the footage where I found things that I believe they're abnormal, cannot be explained. Typically paranormal. Up here, it wasn't, other than those 2 rooms, there wasn't a whole lot.
And the phone.
And the phone. The phone was leaning this way up against the soft case holder container, and the phone fell this way.
Just flip forward.
So, I mean, not really sure. We went through a whole bunch of little quick things to see if there was something and there's no deflection there. But, earthquake test, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I'm only showing you stuff, so if there's an area that I'm showing you more of and an area I'm showing you less of, that's because either the audio wasn't good, something just wasn't there, or it just wasn't happening. And generally you can't, like the voices are a little low, you can't tell them to speak up. You know what I mean? There's just certain things you can't do.
How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing it for 17 years, and I can show you the first picture. If anyone wants to see that from I can show you the first picture I ever took, which is actually pretty amazing. It's a woman walking a dog. You can see both. You can see the woman and the dog. But
and when we were in Tilden, you photographed orbs that things that we couldn't see, right? And I think there's something else to that. I just remember that there was something that was kind of extraordinary as well.
The window, when we were all standing in front of the house, we had the group picture taken. Yeah. If you looked in the window, you could see faces in the window peering out.
But for my skeptics, I am a metrologist and calibration technician. I am science. I definitely debunk as much as I can. And the first thing I do is try to figure out what could it possibly be. The last house I lived in, the alarm, the doorbell would go off once a day around 12 o'clock. And my family would always complain the doorbell always goes off around 11 o'clock. And I'm like, it's got to be something. It's got to be something. Because I am logical and definitely very scientific. Got to be something, got to be something. So one day I was home because I had a dentist appointment in the morning and I was home in the afternoon. And come to find out, we have a wireless door alarm and so does the neighbor across the street. It was Meals on Wheels delivering noon. Who would have thought? I'll tell you what, they were very timely.
That's awesome.
Same time every day. So that's the first thing you do is you're like, well, hold on, wait a minute. How close were you to a circuit breaker? How was that? Were there Bluetooth signals coming through, which you're supposed to have your phone on? airplane mode, so generally that shouldn't even be an issue if you're keeping what they're doing. But yeah, and then so the scientific, the Southwest Boston Paranormal Society, I believe, Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the whole society is, all members are mediums. Beth is the teacher of them, but essentially, they get the feelings, they come up with the stuff, and
with our group, we all have a specialty. He does the EVPs and I do the pictures. So that's why you always see me rocking around with cameras and things like that.
Other questions? Yeah.
Are spirits locked to a location, or like, does anyone ever go home with you?
oh yeah, they check spirits.
Can they jump, or do they stay? Like, could Ezra go home with George?
Yeah.
He could.
They can.
He doesn't want him.
When I leave a location, I always say to them, stay here.
Okay.
I'm not coming home.
And then do they come back, or do you have to tell them to go
No,
away?
they usually pretty much stay here.
Okay.
There's been many times in my house where my wife has been like, named something weird happening that can confirm that, where something weird happens in my house, like, and I mean really weird. And it's always my fault, just like I'm sure it's mostly your fault. It's always my fault that I brought something.
Many years ago, when they were excavating the Native American graves that were discovered on Chapman Street, a bulldozer opened up those graves. There was like 28 graves, right? And every time it rained, I would go and find the remains that were coming out of the backfill so that I could get them to the scientists and get care of it. So I had accumulated quite a batch of pieces of skulls and long bones, people, right? And I don't know, it was like 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning. My grandmother's so angry that these are in the house that, you need to get those out now. They cannot be in this house, So there is that sort of, connection that people sort of think in terms of that. But the thing about Tilden Inn here is, I'm in here sometimes 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Never experienced anything crazy. Never experienced any bad feelings. No, shudder. Other than the dog doing the dog thing, this has been a very comfortable place to work. And never have I ever thought of, hearing the bump or any of those. It's just not that kind of place. But you'd think that, people ask that all the time. You get all these eyes staring at you. What's that like? I kind of think we've sort of gotten used to the calmness of the space. And I think we actually asked Ezra Abbott, do you like being here? And he sort of said yes, so that sort of made us feel a little better about that. There was some inquiry to the good doctor along the way. Well, there's another question I saw on the other hand. Yeah, we'll go here to the back and then I'll come up front.
So you may have touched upon it briefly, but when you're connecting with your main spirit, I noticed with the white noise device, there were a lot of different things coming in, almost like they were competing for attention.
Mm-hmm.
So are others trying to come in, hey, I'm here too, or is it just background noise that they're having their own discussions in their own realms while you're trying to connect to your main intellect?
That's a deep question.
I go deep.
You want to answer that?
Well, to answer your question, they're always trying to compete to come in because it's their one chance to be able to say something. And I teach my students that do mediumship, that you're more than likely going to get one spirit that wants to come through because your mother loved you very much, so didn't your father. So why wouldn't they come in together trying to get that first shot at trying to do some kind of, love or something that they want to get through you. So, yeah, you would always have several spirits that will try to come in at one time.
So how do you focus? Do you just zero in on that one, like you said, you pick up on that intelligent communication?
If I'm doing mediumship, I get the one that comes through the strongest.
Okay.
It's similar with the device. If I hear something intelligent, like I say, like in the Tilden house, I say, what is this? And the first thing that comes through is, it's a dog. And I mean, literally like that. You have my attention at that point. We can have a conversation. So I'll go to that one. But essentially, if you watch too, I'm not specifically asking for one entity. I'm just trying to see what's out there.
When we went to the Tilden house, and you were very much a skeptic when we went to the Tilden house, we have another kind of voice box that we talk to, and we let George put the headphones on. And some of the stuff that came through, I don't remember if it came through with you, but with Judy, my friend Judy had just lost a friend of hers, and our other friend Kim was on the ghost box, and we started talking Portuguese, and Judy's Portuguese, and it turned out it was her friend. So as Judy's talking to her friend on the ghost box downstairs, he's got the other one going upstairs. He doesn't know what's going on downstairs. And you were picking up Portuguese words, remember?
Yeah, you know, it's funny, this is an absolutely true story, it happened today, and just to sort of show you that this stuff is around there. I brought a special speaker in for this today, and before I hooked it up, the connector for the computer, which is here, was sort of dangling over this case here. And then I just threw the speaker. I hadn't been connected. I'm starting to hear words coming out of my speaker, like in a dead room. This was, 11:30 this morning. Nobody else in the building. I'm trying to hook this thing up, and then I realized what this was picking up, just literally against this cabinet. This is all metal, right? And there's light bulbs in here, and there's energy and all this. It was playing NPR. There's no radio in this building. It's absolutely true. And so all of a sudden I start hearing, because these radio waves are all around us, right? All this, so you're picking up all this stuff that's there. In the early days of, do people remember Larry Glick?
Yeah.
Remember Larry Glick?
Yeah.
Right? He used to do this. And as a kid, I would be listening to Larry Glick, and I literally went to Radio Shack, dating myself, bought a cassette tape, brand new, in the plastic, and a tape recorder, and I brought it up to that little cemetery in Sharon over by Knollwood. There's this little cemetery on the hill there. Brought that in at 10 o'clock one night, play and record, left it in the middle of the cemetery, went back and got it about an hour later after I let it run an hour, and I'm not kidding you, there were children playing on that tape. Heard children's voices playing on that tape. Brand new cassette, 10 o'clock at night, middle of the cemetery. So yeah, I continue to have those sort of skeptic type feelings, but I also at the same time know there's other stuff that happens. The radio waves are all around us. I cannot hear NPR in this room right now. Nobody can, right? But it was being picked up against all the metal. Everything's an antenna apparently, right? So everything's around us. Why not? Other questions? Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Do you say hi to Ezra when you get downstairs?
I do now.
Yeah.
I don't know, I was washed his frame yesterday and was very grateful to have it. It literally was just hanging on a wall down there, and it's actually caused me to do more research into Ezra's life. His house is still standing on Washington Street, and so when I go by it, I always think of him now. And maybe that's why people are never truly gone from us, because we still recall them in our dreams or our thoughts or the things that are around us. So I do like that there was this connection with Ezra, somebody who I had never really considered until we did the thing in the basement. And there's other portraits hanging down there, by the way. He's not the only one, but it was the only one that sort of resonated when you called out, and then the meter starts just sort of ticking off. So, I don't know. Can't explain it.
Did he come upstairs with the picture?
Did what?
Did he come upstairs with the picture?
Did he come here? I don't know. I mean, I just brought him up gently. I definitely treat him better now. Definitely sort of, as I'm washing the frame, I'm being very careful with him yesterday. And just, it's just really interesting. And the same thing with the white slave, who turned out wasn't white and may not have been a slave, but that's in a box over here. But the way that all happened, not knowing, was just really interesting. And so that's why we sort of brought some of these items out for you to see after this is over. And you guys will stick around and answer some questions, and get personal. Is there anything else you'd like to know before we sort of conclude? We're very grateful that you're here because you're helping us promote all these amazing programs. There'll be more programs. We'll make sure you're still on our emails. If you're not, sign up for our email list. Definitely stick around for some snacks and look in the cases and ask us questions as we conclude now. What would be helpful is I'll move some chairs out of the way so we have more room to sort of, talk to each other and all. Any other questions or thoughts before we sort of wrap this part of the program up? Anybody? Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned the photo you have with the woman and the dog.
Mm-hmm.
In your 17 years of experience, anything stand out that, like, the most incredible thing you've researched or seen?
So, probably at the Peter Oliver house, or the Peter Oliver estate, a gentleman running across the room. It's on the YouTube channel. It's 5 minutes long and has about 300 views, which is mind blowing. But it's literally a man who is Michael, who was a business partner of Peter Oliver's. He was actually murdered at the house and buried in the front yard. And he's running across the room. He begs me not to shoot him. And in that, there's an EVP and it's an EVP from another guy, George, who owned the house last in the 1970s. And the EVP clearly says, "I hope you caught that. I know you can hear me." And it is clear as day, and the manager of the home, the manager of the estate verified it. And that's pretty awesome. But that was probably one of my crazy.
Ever experienced any of this in your own homes? Yeah, go ahead. Tell us about it.
I wasn't ready to do that.
Well, you don't have to. You don't have to, but.
Well, one is a picture of my brothers in Vermont looking at wedding venues, and he was outside sitting at a picnic table with a riding light on his head eating Chinese food, and his fiance, now wife, took a picture of him, and behind him was my dad holding him like this, and you could see, and I saw the picture, so it was like a see-through of my father.
What was that like? It blew you away.
Yeah, and now he was very close to the vest and sharing the picture, and today he said it's gone. Yeah, I don't know if he kept it or just,
But you saw it.
I saw it,
Yeah.
I saw it, and yeah, and that's just one of many. There's another one with the alarms going off in my mom's house, and it's probably my sister.
I have kind of a cool story
Yeah.
that I'd like to share. I'm also a skeptic, but my friend and I were in middle school, and we were messing around with a Ouija board. And my mother and her fiance came into the room and sat on the couch to watch. And all of a sudden, it's just me and my friend with our fingers on the oracle, and it spells out SLOOPJOH, and it spelled out Sloop John B. And we didn't know the Beach Boys. And my mother's fiance started crying because it was his parents' wedding song, and his father had committed suicide. So yeah, that was a crazy experience because we didn't know that song. So
Other
crazy.
folks, anybody else experience?
It's a two-part question. Number
Yep.
one, what are orbs, but why do they only show up when you take a picture? In other words, we were in Plymouth, she sat in a rocking chair in one of the houses taking that tour at night. And you couldn't see anything, but then I had the camera on video and no orbs all around her. You couldn't see them with your eye, but why do they only show up when you have a camera, and what are they?
I can actually see them with my bare eyes at times.
You can't.
Most mediums can. You see them too, right?
I can't, but I'm the voices guy. Like, if there's a voice, I'm going following it. Everyone's different. Everyone has their own gift.
So what are they?
They're the essence of spirit.
They're not dust.
No, well, some of them are dust.
You have to look at the behavior of it. So there were some orbs in this, but if you notice, I didn't give you any. So a lot of that was because there's force hot air. You look where the duct is. So there is science involved. You're not, none of us want to look foolish, obviously. So you do go through that. But yes, some of them are dust, but you have to look at the behavior of it, which is the lovely thing about video.
Video, right?
You can watch how they act.
house here on Washington Street, that, when I was a kid, I don't know if people remember Faith Sarno, but Faith and her husband, had to renovate their home when they moved in with friends here on Washington Street. Right, it's the long, house next to St. Gerard's. There's a big, long, great house. It was just sold last year, repainted in black and white, and sort of behind the bushes, you can sort of see it there. And they stayed there for like 3 or 4 weeks, and came down one day and said, "Is there something you want to tell us about this house?" To the owners, and she said, you know, that knowing, and they said, "Yes, we have a revolutionary presence in the house." And really, they felt this strong presence of this sort of revolutionary. And there was another place up in Maine, in Stockton Springs. You know, anybody know Stockton Springs? Way up in Maine, a little nowhere. Staying in a house, bed and breakfast, and my wife and I the next morning came down to breakfast and said, "Is there something about this house?" Because we felt the same thing, a military presence in our room, as if somebody was sitting on the edge of our bed. And it turns out the house was owned by a granddaughter of Paul Revere. And this is, you know, unknown, you know, so you learn these things along the way. So there's a lot of unexplained stuff is basically it. And my guess is if more people were as brave as you, they'd say, yes, there are other things that we wonder about in our house. And it happens to us as well.
I have one question. Have you ever had the experience that you buy something, maybe it's used or it's an antique, and when you bring it home, you sense something, like there's some kind of essence on the piece?
I haven't personally, but I've had people tell me that they've had that. One of the people that was in my church brought home a bedroom set. It was an old bedroom set. And he started experiencing some stuff in that bedroom. In fact, he even named the person. So I guess it's possible. I've never had it happen to me.
Have you had it happen?
We had bought a piece, an antique piece, and when I got it, my husband didn't believe it, but I could sense something. And a friend of mine came in, and for some reason I smudged the piece before I brought it in the house. And when my girlfriend walked by it, she said, "You smudged that, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." And my husband passed, I just got rid of it.
Well, let's face it, everything has energy.
Yeah.
You know, furniture, everything has energy. So.
Kind of weird, but I just got rid of it.
That has happened.
Yes.
That has happened to me.
What has?
We dug up, we were working in the yard, and we dug up an old green, glass bottle, which was, remember that? It was all stuck at the top, like clogged up. So I brought it in, washed it all off, and it was sitting on the kitchen counter. And it was there for like a half day, and I went to reach right in front of it for the dishwasher. And somebody literally walked through me. It was freezing cold. And I looked at the glass bottle, "You're out of here." So I knew what it was, but the feeling, it was like my whole body was ice.
Wow. It's funny, I think about this gold wedding band too that's in this case. You know, Paul, where's Paul? There you are. Paul, you know, when we said we're going to go do some metal detecting in these crypts, there are no bodies, they're just empty crypts. Within, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes, that ring comes up out of the ground, and within 6 hours we have the full story, how it was lost, when it was lost, who owned it, who wore it, all of that. And then fast forward to like 5 years ago when the great-granddaughter comes to see the ring. You know, this sort of force about, you know, I know you found something that was connected to my family, can I see it? And, you know, she stood right here in front of this fireplace, you know, and brought the portrait of the woman who wore the ring, you know. So I kind of think sometimes these things want to be found, that they're I don't know what, you know, caused us to sort of trigger the idea to go do it. And then what we find immediately is this amazing story and the power of that. And anytime, you know, we took the ring out for a tour when we were doing the cemetery earlier this year, and anybody who ever held it felt that energy from that story, right? I mean, it sort of speaks to our souls in terms of something like that. So.
One last question. Can these spirits actually physically do anything to us? Like, for example, I've had a couple of incidents where it feels like someone's like brushed and touched me, and then come to find out that there were like 200 spirits in this house that I was staying at that I didn't know. But can you?
They don't really put that in the travel brochure.
There's a farmhouse up in New Hampshire, but it was, and I thought the dogs came into the bed, but the dogs, from what I understand, they always crated, they never leave. But it was they were like something, just like touched across my back. But can they hurt you?
You wanna answer that?
I know.
It's very easy.
Oh, which one? Which time? So my wife has been scratched before. She's coughed like profusely before. We were actually with Sherry, Ben and Teddy, Ghost Hunters show. We were at an event, we were at a party with her, and there was actually, so Central Massachusetts, you guys familiar with Central Massachusetts?
Yes.
You know there's a very famous haunted location in Central Massachusetts? Never seen it on TV? Huh? The SK Pierce Mansion. Never heard of it? So that's actually where I met Beth. When my wife and I were there, my wife was coughing profusely. I was the maintenance guy there for 18 months. People leave, I'm there. 18 months. So my wife coughed profusely there because the spirit didn't like her. It was actually kind of a jealousy thing. It's weird. It's weird. Long story, but you got time? I got time, but not now. But yes, they can, but I've never seen anything like two.
Somebody asked about an orb situation, correct? Do you remember the video of when we were at that house and the orb went flying, you have it on video, and then 2 seconds later, your wife got that scratch on her back?
Yes, yes. So what had happened, and this, what had happened is so we went with a group of people. It was our group, and then we brought a couple guests. One of the guests decided they were going to go off in an area that you're not supposed to be in. She took one of the things from the area that she wasn't supposed to be in and showed my wife it. My wife walked away real quick. She was kind of chuckling. You see an orb fly. It comes down, strikes my wife in the back, and within like about a minute and a half, my wife goes, "My back is burning." Pull up her shirt and look, and she has scratches down her back, like really bad. And that's not normal, but
Never happened here, you're saying.
Never experienced change in temperature when you're dealing with these?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's one of the. Yep.
We bought a house on Waldo Street one time, and we found out the previous owners had died in the house. And the bedroom was always 10 degrees colder than the rest of the house, no matter what we did. We had electric blankets and everything, we still couldn't get it. We ended up selling it and getting out.
Is that why you sold the house? That's not why you sold it.
Well, no, we moved 13 times. So
Okay, oh, well, there you go. Right.
One of the first times I experienced that, I had a neighbor who lived next door in my last house. He's on vacation. He called me over and he was like, "Hey, look at the renovations I'm gonna do. Hey, while I'm at it, I'm gonna redo this bedroom on the second floor." So he brings me up the stairs and he's like, "This one right here, like, if there was, all it needed was music. As soon as we walked in this room, it was like, boom, and it was like, this is a bad room. I look to the floor, and there's this huge amber stain in the middle of the floor, and I'm like, what is that? And he's like, oh, that's where the guy hung himself. I'm like, okay, I'm going home. See ya. Have a nice day.
And just so you know, when people decide that they want to do renovations in their house, that's when the spirits start to go crazy.
Really?
You're changing things. They're like,
Yeah, we did remodel that bedroom, yeah. Stella must have been mad.
We had been doing tours of Canton Corner. Anybody know the story of Bobby Bird? Bobby Bird was the tax collector in Canton at the turn of the last century. He was also the town's auditor, and he figured out a way to steal an entire year's worth of tax receipts. Took the entire budget, and he didn't get discovered until the following year when the auditors came to try to figure out what is going on with Canton, and why is Canton so, I mean, history repeats itself, why is Canton so the auditor comes out, and they're going to discover Bobby Bird's theft of this entire year's worth of taxes. He gets on, he lived right across from the town hall, across from the library, little boarding house there, got on the trolley, got himself up to Canton Corner, went to his mother's grave and killed himself. Shot himself against the grave. So fast forward to 10 years ago, we're doing a project called Grave Intentions. It's a tour at night of the cemetery, and we're bringing people through. And during a rehearsal at Bobby Bird's grave, I'm there sort of mapping it out, and I look at the gravestone, and there is the profile of a head all in red lichen on the gravestone, in the perfect shape of a face. And I was like, looked around at all the other graves. Could I find it in other places? Where does this red lichen growing in terms of this? Precisely where he had killed himself. And so, you know, these are very unexplained. You know, I've told the story many, many times. Walk through the cemetery, never see it ever again. It's like really a crazy story.
As you mentioned, we lived on site at Fairbanks House, which is in the 1600s in Dedham.
Oldest house in America.
Right. One of the oldest living structures in America, in North America, actually.
You lived in the house?
We lived in the other house on the property.
We lived in the 1912 Sears Roebuck Kit House. That was right next to the historic house. And I would say, I guess the way Dan describes this was optimistic skeptics, where we want to believe, but we're really skeptical about it. But what I was always saying after living there was any one thing that happened could be explained, but how many things have to happen before it's too coincidental? And I mean, it was from the very beginning when Dan was first offered the job as curator, and he used to give ghost tours in Boston. So he said, "Oh, is there anything paranormal?" And they were like, "Oh no, there's nothing paranormal here," because they didn't want to scare us off from moving in. And they're like, "No." So then we move in, and of course, in a couple days of moving in, everyone and their mothers come up and be like, "Let me tell you about this creepy thing that happened." Like, oh yeah, there have been ghost hunts here, blah blah blah. And we're like, okay, well, it wouldn't have stopped us from moving in. You could have told us this. But this was like about 2 weeks after we moved in, and it's like 1 in the morning, so we're night owls, and we're just sitting at home, we're chatting, and Dan had spoken to us earlier in the day, and they were going like, "Oh, let me tell you, there is stuff here." So again, we had not discussed paranormal stuff in the house at all with each other at that point, nothing. But we were, he said, "Oh yeah, people say like the alarms will go off in the house at weird times, like weird things happen." And I was like, "Oh, really? Yeah, they didn't tell us about any of that." And that was the first night the alarm in the old house went off for no reason. And it continued to do that. And we would always try to say, "Oh, okay, it's an electrical thing, get it replaced or whatever." And like you guys said, we try to rule it out. And there's stuff that you can't rule out. And like, there's no such thing as, alarm always goes off in the east bedroom between 1 and 3 a.m. about once every other week. Like, okay, but it's not often enough to be an electrical issue that's a regular thing, but it also is often enough that it's not, there's no animal big enough to set off the motion detectors, there's no...
Yeah, 3 times we've replaced that nightlight. We no longer have it in the hallway, we just have a lamp there now. But 3 times we've replaced that motion detecting light, thinking there was something, and the dog always saw stuff that we never saw, so, yeah.
This is when I was growing up. Back in the day, there was a house on Washington Street that caught on fire, and a kid died. And we drive up on High Street, there's a cemetery.
That's right.
On the left-hand side, you drive up, and you drive really slow, and you see a lantern in the cemetery. And then one of my friends grew some cojones and went to the cemetery to see, kind of cemetery, kind of creepy thing. Never saw it. But when you're driving, you'll see the lantern. It was kind of the mother or the son will be in the cemetery with the lantern, just like wait for them to come home. But they died in the fire, so that was the.
Can I say something about the Fairbanks house? I was lucky enough to go in there and do an investigation several years ago, and I got some awesome pictures of spirits in there with my camera. So.
You look familiar. Were we the ones in charge when you did?
Yeah. Well, I was like, you guys look weirdly familiar.
So I just wanted to she kind of left out what I think is the best part. So yeah, that alarm would go off like roughly every other week. And when what stopped it was that, so the last tenant, the previous tour guides had said kind of mean things about her. I did some research and I realized it was just misunderstood. So I started saying nice things about the last tenant and the alarm stopped going off.
Really?
But every time we run away for more than a couple nights, if we were on vacation,
Yeah.
then we would get a call, the security company would call, and be like, oh, we had to call the alternate people because the alarm went off. She didn't like it when the house was left unmonitored. And we went away, it was like, the alarm would be fine for weeks and weeks, and then we leave and suddenly, oh, there's movement in the East bedroom, we'd come back and say, I'm sorry, Rebecca, we were visiting family, we're back now.
Back, you talk to her.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I go in the house periodically and just, how's
She
it going?
would, I think I mentioned earlier, George, that the house was closed from November through April. And so, in November, not that much would happen, as much went on. As we got further through the winter, the alarm would start going off more often. And when Dan would literally go into the house and be like, Rebecca, it's only February, we're not opening the museum until May, but don't worry, people are coming back.
Literally the time.
And it would stop, it wouldn't go off anymore.
That's great. Thank you both. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. There are snacks, so we're going to strike some of these chairs. We hope you'll join us and stick around for a little bit. And if you're not on our mailing list, get on our mailing list, and we invite you to come back. Thank you, Yes. Oh, there's another video that I will upload. I'll send you a link.
No, just 68.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
They didn't think absolutely, yeah. And it goes to, like this, yeah, but
I lived in a house down West Virginia. It was built in 1868 or 64 or something. But I don't know. Somebody. It'd be good. Of course, just hanging up. Have you ever seen that TV show Ghost? Easy way to get to it though, it's harder to get back in there. Yes, there's a couple bars in the house. I'm watching this and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, they're downstairs, and meanwhile around them are like 30 couples. And they're all talking, because that's what's in this house. It's like,
it's just right here.
hello!
Oh, dear.
I
gotta find
I'm sorry, I have a job. Oh yeah, likely excuse, right? Good. I work down in Plantation, and I work in, we have a gristle right in front of our door. So I work there, it's lots of fun. It takes me about an hour. But it's good fun. It's good fun. Have you been having fun? Good.
How are you?
Okay.
And you know that.
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
Good.